हेलो फ्रेंड्स, पिछले क्लास को आगे बढ़ाते हुए इसमें बात करेंगे रिस्क मैनेजमेंट और टेक्निक्स के बारे में। ठीक है। अनदर क्वेश्चन वन में आस्क इन वेदर इंश्योरेंस इज द राइट टू सॉल्यूशन टू ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ रिस्क सिचुएशंस। द आंसर इज नो। Insurance is only one of the methods by which individuals may seek to manage their risk. Here, they transfer the risk they face to an insurance company. However, there are some other methods of dealing with risk which are explained below. Risk avoidance. रिस्क को कैसे अवॉइड कर सकते हैं? Controlling risk by avoiding a loss situation is known as risk avoidance. Thus, one may try to avoid any property, person, or activity which an exposure may be associated. Example: one may refuse to bear certain manufacturing risk by contracting out the manufacturing to someone else. One may not venture outside the house for fear of meeting with an accident or may not travel at all for fear of falling ill when abroad. यानी इसको ऐसे कर सकते हैं कि मान लो अब्रॉड जा रहे हैं तो इसके लिए क्या है कि अरे डर से कहीं नहीं जाना, ट्रैवल नहीं करना, तो इस सिचुएशन में क्या होगा, इसको रिस्क को अवॉइड करना होगा ये। बट रिस्क अवॉइडेंस इज अ नेगेटिव वे टू हैंडल रिस्क। सही बात है ना। आप मान लो कि रिस्क के डर से कि गाड़ी एक्सीडेंट हो जाए, इसके डर से कहीं नहीं जाए, तो ये तो बैड थिंग है, ये निगेटिव थिंग है कि हैंडल नहीं करने का। इंडिविजुअल एंड सोशल एडवांसेस कम फ्रॉम एक्टिविटीज़ दैट नीड सम रिस्क टू बी टेकन। By avoiding such activities, individuals and society would lose the benefits that such risk-taking activities can provide. Risk retention किसको बोलते हैं? One tries to manage the impact of risk and decides to bear the risk and its effect by oneself. This is known as self-insurance. Example: a business house may decide, based on experience about its capacity to bear small losses up to a certain limit, to retain the risk with itself. नेक्स्ट वन, रिस्क रिडक्शन एंड कंट्रोल। रिस्क को कैसे रिडक्ट कर सकते हैं, कम कर सकते हैं, और कंट्रोल कैसे कर सकते हैं? दिस इज अ मोर प्रैक्टिकल एंड रेलिवेंट अप्रोच दैन रिस्क अवॉइडेंस. इट मीन्स टेकिंग स्टेप्स टू लोअर द चांस of occurrence of a loss and or to reduce severity of its impact if loss should occur. Important: the measures to reduce change of occurrence are known as loss prevention. The measures to reduce degree of loss are called loss reduction. रिस्क को रिड्यूस करने के लिए जो मेज़र होता है चांसेस ऑफ एकरेंस का, उसको बोलते हैं लॉस प्रिवेंशन, और जो मेजर होता है लॉस को रिड्यूस का, उसको बोलते हैं लॉस रिडक्शन. रिस्क रिडक्शन इन्वॉल्व reducing the frequency and or sizes of losses through one or more of education and training, such as holding regular fire drills or employees and ensuring adequate training of drivers, forklift operators, wearing of helmets and seat belts, and so on. One example of this can be educating school-going children to avoid junk food. ठीक है। रिस्क रिडक्शन एंड कंट्रोल ये तो पढ़ लिए हम लोग जंक फूड तक। ठीक है। इम्पोर्टेंट क्या है, इम्पोर्टेंट में हम लोग कहाँ तक पढ़े थे, जंक फूड तक पढ़ लिए थे। ठीक है। नेक्स्ट वन, मार्केटिंग एनवायरनमेंट चेंजेस सच एज इम्प्रूविंग फिजिकल कंडीशंस, बेटर locks on doors, bars and shutters on windows, measures to curb pollution and noise levels to improve the health status of its people. Regular spraying of malaria medicine helps in prevention of outbreak of the disease. Changes made in dangerous and hazardous operations while using machinery and equipment or in the performance of other tasks. For example, leading a healthy lifestyle and eating properly at the right time helps in reducing the incidence of falling ill. मतलब इसमें ये बताया जा रहा है कि हम लोग रिस्क को कैसे कम कर सकते हैं। ये नहीं सोच करके कि अरे यार वहाँ नहीं जाएंगे तो ऐसा हो जाएगा, उसके अलावा कैसे हम लोग बच सकते हैं। सेपरेशन, स्प्रेडिंग आउट वेरियस आइटम्स ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी इनटू वेरिड लोकेशंस rather than concentrating them at one location is a method to control risk. The idea is if a mishap were to occur in one location, its impact could be reduced by not keeping everything at that one place. For instance, one could reduce the loss of inventory means stock, okay, by storing it in different warehouses. Even if one of these were to be destroyed, the impact would be reduced considerably. Next one, risk financing. This refers to the provision of funds to meet losses that can be occur. Risk retention through self-financing involves self-payment for any losses as they occur. In this process, the firm assumes and the finances its own risk, either though its own or borrowed fund. This is known as self-insurance. The firm may also engage in various risk reduction methods to make the loss impact small enough to be retained by the firm. Risk transfer is an alternative to risk retention. Risk retention का alternative क्या है? Risk transfer. Risk transfer involves transferring the responsibility for losses to another party. Here the losses that may arise as a result of a fortuitous event or a peril are transferred to another entity. Insurance is one of the major forms of risk transfer, and it permits uncertainty to be replaced and certainly through insurance indemnity. ओके, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड, इसमें हम लोग पढ़ेंगे इंश्योरेंस एंड एश्योरेंस, इंश्योरेंस वर्सेस एंड एश्योरेंस. ठीक है, क्या पढ़ेंगे? इंश्योरेंस वर्सेस एश्योरेंस. बोथ इंश्योरेंस एंड एश्योरेंस आर financial products offered by companies operating commercially. Of late, the distinction between the two has increasingly become blurred, and the two are taken as somewhat similar. However, there are subtle differences between the two as discussed hereunder. Insurance refers to protection against an event that might happen, whereas assurance refers to protection against an event that will happen. इंश्योरेंस वर्ड हम लोग यूज़ करते हैं कोई चीज़ माइट हैपन रहता है तब, और एश्योरेंस का यूज़ करते हैं जब विल हैपन होता है. इंश्योरेंस प्रोवाइड्स कवर अगेंस्ट रिस्क while assurance covers an event that is definite. Example, death, which is certain, only the time or occurrence is uncertain. Assurance policies are associated with the life cover. How insurance indemnity. Individual has taken motor insurance. ठीक है, individual meets with an accident. Individual makes a claim. Insurance company indemnify. Individual क्या है कि इंडिविजुअल मोटर एक्सीडेंट्स हो गया. ठीक है, उसके बाद फिर एक उसके पास मोटर था, इंश्योरेंस था, यदि एक्सीडेंट हो गया तो इंडिविजुअल क्लेम किया, क्लेम कर उसको कंपनसेशन मिल गया. देयर आर अदर वेज टू ट्रांसफर रिस्क. फॉर एग्जांपल, व्हेन अ फर्म इज पार्ट ऑफ अ ग्रुप, द रिस्क मे बी ट्रांसफर्ड टू द पेरेंट ग्रुप which would then finance the losses. Thus, insurance is only one of the method of risk transfer. ओके, इस स्लाइड में हम लोग बात करेंगे इंश्योरेंस एज अ टूल फॉर मैनेजिंग रिस्क. इंश्योरेंस को हम लोग एज अ टूल के रूप में यूज़ करेंगे. ठीक है, एज अ टूल के रूप में यूज़ करेंगे, मैनेजिंग रिस्क के टूल के रूप में. व्हेन वी स्पीक अबाउट अ रिस्क, वी आर नॉट रेफरिंग टू अ लॉस दैट हैज़ एक्चुअली बीन suffered but a loss that is likely to occur. It is thus a expected loss. The cost of this expected loss, which is the same as the cost of the risk, is the product of two factors: the probability that the peril being insured against may happen, leading to the loss, the impact or the amount of loss that may be suffered as a result. The cost of risk would increase in direct proportion with both probability and amount of loss. However, the amount of loss is very high and the probability of its occurrence is small. The cost of the risk would be low. Consideration before opting in for insurance. इंश्योरेंस को ऑप्ट करने से पहले क्या सोचना चाहिए? Considering before opting for insurance, पहले, don't risk a lot for a title. Don't risk more than what you can afford to lose. Consider the likely outcomes of the risk of carefully. Consideration before opting the insurance. When deciding whether to insure or not, one needs to weigh the cost of transferring the risk against the cost of bearing the loss that may arise oneself. The cost of transferring the risk is the insurance premium. It is given by two factors mentioned in the previous paragraph. The best situations for insurance would be where the probability is very low but the loss impact could be very high. In such instances, the cost of transferring the risk through its insurance, the premium would be much lower while the cost of bearing it on oneself could be very high. Don't risk a lot for a little. A reasonable relationship must be there between the cost of transferring the risk and the value of deprived. Would it make sense to insure an ordinary ball pen? No, don't risk more than you can afford to lose. If the loss that can arise as a result of an event is so large that it can lead to a situation that is near bankruptcy, retention of the risk would not appear to be realistic and appropriate. Example: what would happen if a large oil refinery were to be destroyed or damaged? Could a company afford to bear the loss? No. Consider the likely outcomes of the risk carefully. It is best to insure those assets for which the probability of occurrence frequency of a loss is low, but the possible severity impact is high. Could one afford not to insure a space satellite? Would one afford to not insure a space satellite? So friends, ये था आज क्लास सेकेंड. ठीक है, आप लोग बताएंगे कि आप लोग को कैसा लगा क्लास. यदि अच्छा लगेगा तो मैं इसको कंटिन्यू रखूँगा. थैंक यू एंड ऑल द वेरी बेस्ट.